Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are here, and once again, it is our great pleasure to be in your reality. Today is a special day, and in that regard, we are going to transmit some special energies. Those of you who are here to participate in person at a moon afternoon are going to be well rewarded. So that is good. And those of you out there in Mystery Land, listening into some version of the future, you too will be rewarded, although a bit differently. Tomorrow, the sun is on the Pleiades. And tomorrow is May 18, our channeling anniversary. Tomorrow is also a new moon. All of this combines to create a great amount of energy. Energy that is yours to spend. Energy that can boost you up and give you a great dose of life fulfillment, of accomplishment, of reward, of gifting. And so it is our pleasure to be able to boost this energy for you and to give you a, let's say, extra beneficent doses of powerful, life-enhancing and life-changing energies. That said, we are here for another moon afternoon to explore unexplained mysteries. That is the title of our course of discovery for this year, Exploring Unexplained Mysteries, of which there are no shortage. And the underlying theme is cosmic connections between ancient worlds and modern times. And many unexplored and unexplained mysteries can be explained, or at least understood, when one changes one's beliefs and one's perspectives on reality. Beliefs, of course, can liberate you, they can lock you in. Beliefs are the shape of how you expect reality to take hold. Beliefs are agreements. Beliefs are taken for granted so that they can appear to be facts. And there is a fine line of separation. What is indeed a fact? People can be so caught up in their beliefs or their perspectives about reality that as factual events or realities unfold before them, they refuse to see what is before their eyes, because beliefs can be like blinders. And perspectives, let's say, are colored by what you expect reality to conform to. The change over years, from 2013 through 2027, are proving to be quite confounding for all of humankind. There seems to be a general state of confusion among many people. Their beliefs are in diametric opposition to the data that is being presented throughout the world, evidence, as you would call it. Sometimes when people see something counter to their beliefs, they have a eureka moment. The light bulb goes off in their head. Many of you wish that would happen to your loved ones, to your friends. You wish that we would shed some old beliefs and get a new perception. Now, perception is everything. Perception is different than perspectives and beliefs. Perception is the ability to truly note what is going on around one. Phenomena, regular events. So perception is the liberating factor. And people are perceiving more and more unusual things all of the time. This is contributing to the scrambling, the unraveling, and most important, the mental insecurity that is rising very rapidly among people all over the world. Sometimes you hear things on the news and people seem to be doing crazier and crazier things. Some people say it is as if demons have taken over the world. That's not far from the truth. You have really been dealing with lots of entities from the astral realms who are slipping and sliding into humans and affecting their behavior. This is a given. And the rise in craziness and people doing unconscionable activities is absolutely growing in great numbers. Another issue is the recalcitrant behavior of people, meaning that you're back to the late 60s once again, when people are not going to obey, they want to rebel, they want to speak out, they are angry, they want to blame someone else for all of their problems. This reverts back to mental unrest, mental instability. And then there is the rising issue of people literally becoming sick in the physical body from the type of nutrition or lack of nutrition that they are taking in. And even some of your most supposedly nutritious foods are suspect. So there's unrest, there is distrust. There is Hillary Clinton now coming on the scene claiming she wants to be the champion, her word, of course, for the regular human. You know what a champion is? It is someone who takes up the fight for another. If a king or a personage of high position was challenged at one time to some sort of battle or joust, that king perhaps may not get on the horse himself or go into battle, but would assign a champion. And the champion would be in lieu of someone else, and they would be the fighter. So Hillary wants to be the champion for the common American. Hillary, who does not drive a car, hasn't driven a car in decades, allegedly. Hillary, who has somewhat of a drinking problem and has a secret sexual life. And Hillary, who charges $200,000 or $300,000 for her 1 hour and 1 hour and 1/2 pep talks. Perception, perspectives, beliefs, or out-and-out propaganda. The question is this: how long is it that people will continue to be suppressed and fleeced and hold it in? And how long will you have a mainstream media reporting on things that are completely and totally irrelevant? The change over years are defined as breaking down the system that has been sold to you in every aspect of being. Our focus is to help you understand that you are a product of cosmic connections. You live on Earth, but your roots actually are in the stars. And all of this type of information, as heretical as it may sound, is coming to the forefront of human awareness. And world leaders are looking a bit worn out. Even Mr. Obama is looking rather strained these days. It is because the pressure of deceit and the pressure of incoming events is growing in greater and greater proportion. The unexplained mysteries are starting to make sense. They are starting to be explainable. Things that were left on the planet for tens of thousands of years are now suddenly seen as an important piece of Earth's cosmic puzzle. Understanding that visitors from long ago have always felt they have owned Earth. They have been presenting the idea to you that you are a colony of the Anunnaki overlords. And they are having problems here on Earth because of certain time triggers that are being released. And they are having problems within their empire per se because of the deceit and the tyrannical nature of their feudal systems. You know, the ideal of rulership is to have an enlightened rulership, a person or personages at the top that are so psychically connected. They feel what the people are thinking, and they look after the well-being of those that they are to watch over. This is a projection, of course, of what some would call God. But unexplained mysteries are starting to, as we said, be more explained in modern terms. Perceptions are growing. Clues from one part of the world to the other are beginning to make sense. This afternoon we will explore some of these clues. The continuous sightings that are seen, the drones that are showing up everywhere in terms of balls of light, the large craft and objects, and more important, what's coming out of the ground. Many people have been focused on looking up. Yet, we believe a class or two ago, George was reporting about the booms that were being heard around the world, particularly in San Francisco area. Some project that these booms are about Earth grinding away at its metallic core. Others project, with a little more sense, that the underworld is quite busy. We'd like to talk about the underworld this afternoon, among other topics, of course, and about what's coming out of the ground. A number of years ago, going on perhaps now 20, there were stories about giants, large creatures with bright red carrot top hair appearing in the Middle East. And it was rather disconcerting, and these creatures were coming out of various openings in the ground, and there were captures at this time of beings, giant beings, ferocious, that were anywhere from 10 to 15 feet in height. This, of course, would be quite astounding for any of you regular-sized humans to encounter someone 10 to 15 feet in height. Yet the history of the planet is well seasoned with these kinds of stories. And this is not simply in foreign countries or remote places around the world. This is here also in the US of A. So while things were happening in the Middle East, the bombings, etc., you had shock and awe, George Bush 1 invasion of the Middle East, then 10 years later, plus a few, George Bush 2 invasion of the Middle East, and now you have Jeb Bush, third one in perhaps a dynasty, vying for a nominee role. There are stories, about people's origins, the Bushes in particular, that they have allegedly come from the inner earth. That is a bit of tidbit here and there, but it's up to you humans to use your perceptions and to put the pieces together based on what your guides and what your life teaches you. Life is a lesson in awareness, and we bid each of you to make a greater investment in your awareness, because it is your awareness that changes the direction of the present towards a more life-fulfilling future. Remember that. The more you are willing to know and to be aware, the more life can reward you with support for that awareness. Now, things are reaching a boiling point, that is, to put it mildly. We have suggested that the year 2015 is going to be full of some wows. These wows will be external events, they will be internal events. Whenever you see an acceleration outside of yourself, and you see things starting to get discombobulated, it is a sign that things are further moving towards collapse. And if you take a moment to clear your mind, ground yourself, dropping a grounding cord down to the center of the earth, aligning your chakras simply by picturing the colors and checking your aura, making a nice, strong, vibrant aura. These 3 simple keys demonstrate that you are aware enough to manage your energy field. This is probably the greatest test that all of humankind is experiencing just now. You are all watched all of the time. You are watched by guides, yes, your own, many of whom are deceased relatives who are assigned to work with you, some of whom are other versions of yourself that have not incarnated, or mentors or teachers from other lifetimes. You are watched by beings who need no technology to read your energy field. They know by the vibration that your aura and your DNA exudes exactly where your perceptions are. Then you are surveilled by Earth-based or Earth-originated satellites, craft that are put up in space so that everything about you can be monitored. In the USA, there is an extreme drive to have the internet, the World Wide Web, the nets, so to speak, pull you in so that every aspect of life is monitored. Some people are very excited about this. They are the machine riders, those who purposely incarnated onto Earth to be receptive to a constantly monitored and surveilled society. Today you have the big issue now where police people are going to all be wearing cameras to make certain that they don't misbehave, or to make certain that there's no discrepancy between they said, we said, he said, etc. And people tend to agree, oh, this is going to be a lot better, we're going to keep track on who's saying what exactly, and there goes the game. You are racing towards a type of society where everything is photographed all of the time. Just like it was produced to you or presented to you in the early 90s in a movie, the show called about some fellow. He was living in an artificial world there, and starring Jim Carrey.
The Truman Show.
The Truman Show, yes, exactly. And then we said it's going to be a show called Earth. Well, that was 20 years ago. Now it is a show called Earth because there are many beings watching you. Again, on the guide level, on the watchers level, remember the Bible and some of the old literature talks about the watchers. Who are the watchers? Some believe they are the Nephilim. Some believe they are the angels who tend to be a police force for the Anunnakis, those who come and go to Earth and report to other dimensions. And so you are challenged, friends, to expand your perceptions so that others will do the same. There's a reason for all this watching. There's a reason for all this statistical gathering and projections. It has nothing to do with advertisements or marketing, although that is the bill of goods that is sold to you. You are, as we said, on the verge, closer than close, to frying or flying. Yes, flying or frying. Which way will it go? It will go both ways, of course, because there is not one future. There are many. And they are based on what you notice and what you put together in the inner ahas that you have, that then strengthen your DNA and demonstrate that you are a wondering, thinking being. When we were in China, there was a garden. It was called the Garden of the Nets, and it was given in honor of a fisherman who had saved a child of an emperor. And the Garden of the Nets was set out to be a place of serenity and beauty. And long ago, it was only the emperor who could have beautiful gardens. And today, it's hard-pressed to find people of regular stature having beautiful gardens in China. In America, this is gardening season. And many of you are taking tremendous joy in land ownership and the property that you have and the beauty that you make. When you make beauty, when you build beauty, when you construct with beauty, so that the eye rests upon beauty, and you do it incorporating the properties of nature, you automatically enhance your consciousness. When you live in disarray, in ugliness, in pollution, in clutter, then the energy becomes stagnant. So now everyone in the room and out there in Mystery Land, just give a thought to the places that you have created that have beauty. A vase of flowers, the colors that are arranged properly, plants in a beautiful place, perhaps your backyard, your porch, your patio, perhaps a vista out the window. And then think of the areas in life that are stagnant, the piles of unattended clutter. And then imagine a pool where the water's all dirty, oil covers it and it's murky. There's weird creatures in it. It's a bit smelly. Not a good picture, is it? That's what your clutter creates. It creates a stagnancy. When the energy can't move, then things start to grow into decay. 2015, the year will face either enhancing beauty or great stagnancy. We ask each of you to look in your life to see where you are stagnant and where you are making beauty. To continue with the beauty because it enhances your perceptions and your psychic awareness, and it sends off a very powerful signal within your DNA, one of responsibility and one of an investment in your awareness. You see, when you get out of your thinking mind and you start doing, you are more in tune with what needs to be done. When you get into the thinking mind, you want to control the situation, and of course the thinking mind is necessary to accomplish certain things. Today people don't know what to think. They are so busy they don't stop to enjoy life and to make beauty. This is the big conundrum that humankind is facing. Something big is brewing to come down this year to alleviate the pressure. And each of you can help alleviate that pressure by taking greater charge of your own life and by enhancing your perceptions of what is in the ether, what is in the air. All right, that's our delivery. We have much more to say, but we'll give you a chance to respond, to give examples, to share some of your stories, and of course to ask us questions, to further explain some of the mysteries that are going to pop out of the ground and pop out of the heavens. So that said, let's explore a delicious Pleiadian-oriented May 17th moon afternoon. Who would like to begin, please? George Ward, we'll start with you.
Okay, good, because I have
Good. We were reading the vibrations there, and everyone's laughing because they're going, all right, good. That's always, they're happy when you start, George. All right.
So just recently, it came up when I went online, our homepage, and it was a story, and I didn't read, I just read the headline. So I really didn't read about it, but basically it was that Antarctica is thawing much faster than they thought. So that is speeding up, and they're even saying that within our lifetime it could be completely thawed out, like there would be no ice covering over Antarctica.
Interesting, and because every week or two there's something new about Antarctica. Every week it's about space. Every day, actually, they're dropping some new tidbit about space. There's a rush. Antarctica, yes, we will say that in some capacity, we know we've been testing you on what global warming, climate change really means. And of course, we talked about depopulation and the presence of Nibiru. But when we were speaking about being surveilled, it is important to understand that the Anunnaki, they may have withdrawn a large presence from the surface of the planet and left their surrogates here as kings and queens and popes and presidents and some such. But they have left machineries under the earth and in the heavens. And with their pending return and fight over the family dynasties and the location of artifacts, which has been going on in the Middle East for 20 years, they, it appears, are greatly invested in getting to what's under the ice. And they certainly have technology to create global warming and change your weather patterns and melt ice. Please continue.
So that's what I thought. It's it's terraforming, but it's to get to first, or get to that, so that they can have a controlled information about what actually is found as things thaw out there. But also, is there, or are there, could it be that there are underground, that's a major area of underground activity?
Absolutely, positively. This is why every country in the world, it's an exaggeration, that would be too many, but so many have planted flags there. And of course, Hitler and his Nazis were, as we said, the last Moon Musings class, they claimed to be working with supermen, giant, tall, blonde-headed beings. Notice that there are blonde giants, and then there are the red-haired carrot giants, yes. Now, the Antarctica, what better way to hide something than to cover it in ice? Yes?
Yes. So could it be that it's not what we think, that's actually been a controlled pattern to keep ice over that continent?
Yes.
Not
Now,
just that it's the polar caps?
good. It is our intention that everyone's little beanie really swirls today and goes to a higher level. Now, it's important to understand that a career builder and career achievements within the Anunnaki are vast. They are impeccable builders. They know how to construct moons. They know how to construct worlds. In China, for example, we see China as Enki's territory. Enki being the dragon or the serpent, and of course China having its oldest allegiances to the dragon. Enki's job was an engineer, premier engineer, to literally move mountains, to uncover the earth, to find gold, etc., and to make certain that these mining expeditions for gold and precious and semi-precious stones were carried out. His secondary plans were, of course, engineer in terms of helping to orchestrate the biogenetic changes of the living library, construct humans. This is with his sister's help, etc. She being Ninma of the biological fields. So the Anunnaki under Enki know how to build. They know how to build out of stone. They know how to move water. They know how to move mountains. In China, for example, they were taught, the emperors, that they had to have a mountain behind them and water in front of them. That would be the most auspicious layout of the land. And if this did not exist, no problem. Even in the last 1,000 years, big holes were dug. And how do you think they were dug? By hand with shovels. And huge amounts of earth were moved to build a mountain. And then in the hole, water was filled. You see this all over China. And this is only in modern times. In ancient times, the Anunnaki literally would dig a hole and build a huge mountain. And the water would face south, and the mountain would be behind them to the north. So there's no project that you can imagine that would be impossible for the Anunnaki to build. And they have left this builder-worker buzz programmed in the Chinese people, even so that today it can be activated. The people in North America are self-selected. Your ancestors migrated here. You have very few indigenous people still left in this country. And the giants have been wiped out from the surface, and they have retreated to the underworlds. So, the people that migrate to North America are not builders. They are not, give us any project, we will build a bridge to the moon. The Chinese will. They will build an elevator to the moon. It does not seem impossible to them at all. To the Americans, that's not their goal. The American goal and the American code within the DNA is to draw all of the people who have the DNA that has a potential to think in terms of freedom. That freedom may be freedom from religion. It may be freedom from tyrannical governments. It may be people moving to the West Coast to get away from the stifling East Coast, etc. And there's maybe people like you who have the freedom to be heretics, to question and to think. This freedom will be born out of this country. Now, back to what George is perceiving. There are things buried under Antarctica, and there are villages, and even way down there are thermal springs. So there have always been a contingency of beings who were left there to guard certain things. Sometimes these beings could take physical shape, sometimes they were dimensional. This happens all over the world, you know, where forces are imbued or called upon to guard something. And if something is invaded or interfered with before the correct timing, those who are left to guard, they take care of things, or they send a signal to someone else. So Antarctica appears to be, from some point of view, it's just called the underworld. And it was one of Enki's sons, or perhaps daughters, who was it, Erich Kegel, we believe, who was put in charge of this underworld. And it was big project, big things were located there. And the Anunnaki lost control of the planet long ago, 13,000 years ago, and their Antarctica project, when it is said that the ice cap sort of slipped and melted and created a big flood. But the key to remember is what happened after the flood waters retreated. And it is important to understand, when you're talking about flood, that never was the whole world underwater all at the same time. That's very important to remember. Certain areas of lower land were underwater, and some areas have been sealed off. Some areas are built with openings. Please, if you are going to cough, cover your mouth so that the harsh coughing does not show up on the CD. Thank you, please, for coughers. So, all of this is part of the pressure that is being put on world leaders today, that the leaks and the facade, the structure that has held history in place for a few thousand years is coming apart at the seams. This is why the disclosures, the reportings on Antarctica, the moon, Mars, and soon you will hear more and more reports about things that are coming out of the ground. What else, George?
Well, I just had the question there about could it be a controlled thing, because when you look at other planets in our solar system, well, Mars is the one that's most obvious, their ice caps are seasonal. They're not like always in a frozen state. there's very little water, it's a different situation. There's a lot of water on our planet, that could be it. But it seems like that it could be that that was designed to have this cold to keep people away. It was such a harsh that no human.
Absolutely, and remember it is called Antarctica, so you have an "an" in there. And another important point of consideration is that Enki, one of the two brothers there, Enlil and Enki's territory was Africa. And he sent one of his children down there to be in South Africa and then be close to Antarctica. And it is reported that when the planet Nibiru enters your system, it enters from the south.
Of course.
So that would then, having something at the South Pole region, would give the greatest warning, the greatest control, and the, let's say, first landing pad of the Anunnaki. Now, there's a few other points of consideration, unexplained mysteries. Here's a modern one. The people of the U.S. are up in arms about military exercises that are going to take place or are beginning to take place in the southwest region of the USA. They are called
Jade Helm.
What is it?
Jade Helm.
Jade Helm 15 or something. And we would say that it's not so much about wanting to control the politics of various states. That is a cover story. Remember, the media likes to play Republicans against Democrats, and that takes up a lot of flack and a lot of story coverage, and it acts as great camouflage for anything else that is too outrageous to consider. The southwest of the USA has White Sands Missile Monument. It has the first atomic blast site, Trinity site. You have Carlsbad Caverns. You have the large areas of New Mexico that are off bounds for U.S. citizens. You have tremendous amount of national park land, federal land, etc. You have stories from native peoples. Many stories about ant people who live in the ground. This is from the Hopi. And then you have many other stories that date far back about giants, races of giants, cannibals, who allegedly attacked many of the tribes, the Paiutes, the Anasazis, the Apaches, etc. You know, history does have its own cycles. And you know, just as the seasons come around again, every summer is different from the previous summer, but summer is summer. And cycles are cycles, and they bring up certain issues. Certain energies are more prevalent from one cycle to another. This is the whole premise of understanding astrology. It looks to us as if Jade Helm is not so much oriented towards what you call it when you take away people's rights and you arrest them.
Civil unrest or
civil unrest.
Martial law.
Martial law, very good. It's not so much about pending martial law and FEMA camps and things of this nature, although this is an issue, and it will certainly become a larger and larger issue, the recalcitrant behavior of people rebelling and not listening. But part of that is also mental instability because of the lies and the deceit that people intuitively know are being said, but they don't logically know what the truth is. We see that the problem is what's under the surface, and the growing awareness by higher ups in U.S. military that too many things, weird things, are coming out of the ground. In national parks, of course, some of which are having more territory closed off, there have been disappearances. There have been many disappearances. This is a growing concern among the public and among police forces of how many people go missing, and the numbers around the planet are growing greater and greater. So expect that some of the changes that will come about this year and next year will have phony excuses to herd people in certain directions or to keep them out, isolated from others. And the forces will use civil unrest or some sort of toxicity, some excuses to close down areas. It's easy to close down the Antarctic. How does one close off the Southwest if creatures are coming out of the ground? And this is not isolated to the US alone. South America, there's many problems. Northern Canada, there are problems. China has been developing a growing awareness that its western portions are honeycombed with the artifacts from ancient dynasties. And so there is a concerted movement to push people off the land from the western and central regions of China and to push them further and further east. You will see something similar occurring in this country. It's already starting a bit with California. And then there will be activated volcanic activity that may further serve to drive people out of certain land areas. The larger picture involves coming to terms, not only with cosmic connections, but what lies beneath your feet. Who else has a comment or a question?
This is Sue.
Sue, welcome.
Thank you. So is there any certain criteria with the people who are disappearing from the national parks, or is this randomly, are the people randomly chosen, or is there a pattern to their disappearances?
Most often they are younger people. An older person is not as tasty if they are being cannibalized, nor are they as productive in terms of a workforce. Some of the disappearances can happen in terms of like a sleeve of energy is laid down. You may call it a mini black hole. And a person can just be sort of slipped into, vacuumed up, so to speak. This is very frightening. And there are people now working on databases to start to create comparisons as to how many people do go missing in the forested regions. But there are people who, on street corners, walk the streets and go disappearing. This has always been here, this phenomena, but it has increased. And there's more poaching, so to speak, more interference. And of course, world governments are not about to let this out. The disappearing people are called amnesiacs or runaways because they can't explain and they can't protect. And then this will set people crazy. So you have a number of issues going on here. This greater prevalence of energetic anomalies, weakenings in the electromagnetic field, so to speak, where a hole or time portal can open, and the high-ups of the world being very frustrated, being betrayed by deals that they have made with others. Of course, they are betraying the people, so of course they're going to create being betrayed. It's difficult to find people who want to be in charge. Of course, Hillary thinks it's more of an ego thing with her than it is anything else. But no one's lining up in great droves to take on this very, very, very stressful position of being in charge of the USA, one of the premier countries in the world that is going to have the most difficult time in the future. Now, there are warnings, and there have been warnings and messages left all over the planet about the times that you are in. Prophecies, as we've been talking about, can be laid out just as George, as an astrologer, or someone that's a numerologist, can say, well, I can see with this divination system that X, Y, and Z may occur in 6 months or a year, etc. And when you do this, George, and you say to someone, next year may be challenging for you, you're going to have Saturn come to your sun. You say it with all confidence, yes? And it doesn't sound as if you are doing some kind of outrageous magic. You can say, well, look, I can see this pattern in this book, and you have legitimate reasons for saying these things, yes?
Yes.
As would any astrologer.
Right.
Understand that the Anunnakis make their own prophecies, deliver their prophecies, and deliver them in the same way George would deliver a prophecy to someone who would have Saturn coming to their sun. Could create all kinds of things, depending upon how the person approached it. And so too it is with these prophecies. They are just extended outward, and because you don't live so long, it seems as if it's magical to have a prophecy delivered hundreds of years or thousands of years before its actualization. Well, not if you know how the game is run. And the point is this: what used to throw people in awe is now shrinking. And what used to be awe-inspiring and unexplainable is now coming down to common sense. If there are stories about black holes opening, and these stories happen all over the planet, then there's a unifying factor. It is said that the ancient people warned of these black holes, and they would draw a sign that would indicate that black holes were prevalent or were being used. Who knows what the sign for a black hole would be? Sue, you have any idea?
Spiral?
Sue, you got a gold star there.
Oh, thank you.
You got that one. That was, we gave you first choice on it. Then it was going to be Michael and Stevie next. So you got your gold star. Don't start now thinking that you holding it over the others. But it was well deserved. It is the spiral, and you will see this spiral in many places. You see the labyrinth, yes? Mm-hmm. And what is consistent with the labyrinth? Steve?
Well, it's like a maze.
A maze, but with a labyrinth there's only one way to get in and out, yes?
Right.
And so one could say that the labyrinth and the maze would also be a sign and a symbol of ancient memory of these black holes. One way in and one way out. And if you didn't know what you were doing, you could get lost. Now, it is possible that beings open up black holes in a forested region, and a person simply walks into it. And the person may sense a little bit of magic in the air, a quickening of light, a quickening of the molecules, as if you could reach out and grab something that's not there. And then, boom, where do they go? You have stories of Rip Van Winkle. Who knows the story of Rip Van Winkle? What happened to him?
He fell asleep for 100 years.
For 100 years.
Was it 100 or 20? 100, I think.
I don't know.
And then he awoke and everything was different.
And everything was different. One could say that was a sign of an abduction. He was taken, then brought back. There are in your histories, in your cartoons, in your myths, your legends, and your fairy tales, stories of what appears to be long ago, but it's not so long ago. It's your short age span that limits your ability to string events together and to expand your beliefs. And even the die-hard true believers, if they live long enough, they will change their beliefs. Because if you live long enough, you start to see everything in a different light. Now, the energy of today and what's making people off balance, particularly mentally, is that on a psychic level, everyone is psychic, you know this. Few people want to acknowledge it or admit it. They are afraid, they are embarrassed, or some people think they don't have it. Everyone has an inner radar. And what's happening today is the inner radar is feeling frightened. And lots of people say, well, what the heck? It's all going to blow up anyways. Because the inner radar is picking up on events that have not yet manifested. Events of great tumult. Events where you do go into wars and you start warring, not what's in the skies necessarily, but what's under your feet. And if you can't trust what's beneath the ground and what might pop out of the ground on some moonless night like tonight, then it becomes pretty scary to live on Earth, yes?
Yes.
Anything else, Sue?
Well, I had read I have a book at home called Unexplained Mysteries.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And in there's a chapter on disappearances.
All right.
And there's a couple in there from the mid-1800s where a farmer's walking out into the field to get his cows, and his wife and child are sitting on the porch, and in front of their eyes
he disappears.
He disappears.
Yes. This is from the 1800s.
1800s.
Sue, people are swearing that this is again happening today. That they watch someone and right before their eyes they're gone. And this is the example of, we said, the sleeve that is put down and the person simply walks into that sleeve or that portal, or that the symbol would be the spiral, and it would be a mini black hole, and they would simply disappear. This book you have, when was it written?
It was written in the early 90s.
All right.
And it was put out by Time magazine.
Time magazine, all right.
But also within reading other articles in there, they'll put some in there where people have disappeared but then reappeared years later also. And then they had another story about another farmer who had just disappeared in front of their neighbors. They waved to them, and as they're waving to them, the farmer disappears.
How did you feel when you read those accounts?
Well, when I read those, I went...
Was it night or day?
It was in the daytime. Oh, when I read them?
Yes.
Sometimes at night I read it, and so I think, I go,
I'm not going outside tonight.
I'm not going outside tonight. Well, and it made me think like this has been happening even before now, but it's been kept quiet.
Yes, so again, an unexplained mystery can be explained when one moves one's perception away from the earth a bit and says, it's been going on in this country and in the 1800s, and it's currently happening. Well, then this is not some unexplained phenomena. This is very explainable. Something that lives a long time and watches Earth is abducting people. Sometimes people are put back, sometimes they are not. The modern flurry over the last, let's say, 30 years has been with abductions. People literally finding themselves in an abducted scenario, facing creatures. Some of them say they feel like they were at the bar in Star Wars.
Yes.
Well, that scene of the bar in Star Wars was not contrived by special effects. Certainly special effects made it, but there were instructions. And today your film industry, your movies, all of your entertainment is depicting what's going on in these mysteries that are plaguing humankind. What else, Sue?
I had another thought, but it left my mind right now.
All right, let's discuss. Have you been out west, Sue?
Yes, I went to the gold mining country, North San Juan.
North San Juan, all right.
Out there.
Now,
And excuse me, please. I have been to Utah, Zion National Park,
all right.
and Arizona.
All right, that's what we were after, the Utah and Arizona. There are multiple petroglyphs. Petroglyphs are carvings in rocks. And there are multiple petroglyphs depicting a very large being, often just large, with sort of
Antenna?
shoots or antenna coming out of the head, more indicating a big brain, you understand, or lots of mental power. Remember, the glyphs were painted or etched in to depict a message in the simplest way that could cross time. And then next to the giant would be a spiral. And this spiral, you find this all over the petroglyphs. You look up books, you look in things, you start to look, you'll find this. This is an indicator that large beings utilize a space-time continuum that is like a whirlwind, a spiral, and that they can swirl energy and move through time. Remember, when you are looking at symbols, symbols work between the dimensions. Words, the written language, of course, it's a symbol for a sound, and the sound works between the dimensions. But the meaning of the sound varies. If you are in Hollywood and you say, look, there goes a star, it has one meaning. If you are out in Sue's backyard and you say, look at the sky, there goes a star, there's another meaning. So meaning is different than the sound. And when you are talking about pictures, pictures are interdimensional. This is why they were made. We talked to you a number of classes ago about the power of the Platonic solids and how these solids were given to Plato because they represented structures that worked between dimensions, not just third dimension. And the Anunnaki, being builders, being that is one of their great fortes, and have created races of giants to fulfill their building for them, or let's say races of construction workers. Imagine you are a builder. Michael, you are a builder, yes?
Yes.
Good. So imagine you are some big builder, and you have a big design, and you need the right workforce to carry it out. So you put in a work order and you say, send me 100 construction workers that are between 20 and 25 feet tall. And I will provide the food for them, and I will like them for, let's say, 1 Earth year, 2 Earth years, something like this. You can conceive of this, yes?
Yes.
As a builder, your job, whether it is to build a house, a garage, or a high-rise crane building, would be to put it all together, to make certain that the materials are there and the people that have the right instructions to take the materials and to carry out the plans. This is pure Anunnaki at its roots. So there's your connection to the Anunnaki, Michael. You understand some ancient buildings, and it would do you, your mind, some good to look at some books, perhaps, that have some of these large planetary structures in them, and to see if you can tap into your connection to them, or even to manage a few visits in the next year or two would really light up your circuitry. Do you have a question, Michael?
No, it's just, I looked at Sue because I have the desire to go to these places.
Good. It is because you have the connection from long ago to be in charge of some of these projects. And that we will leave as an enigma for you to unfold. You know, we give you clues, but we can't do all your thinking for you. All right, we're getting some good discussion going here. Who has insight, a comment?
Peace, this is Steve.
Yes, Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Also wanted to follow up on the mini black hole.
The mini black holes, yes.
Is it possible for humans, Terrans, to create one?
A little louder. Is it possible?
Is it possible for Terrans to create a mini black hole to disappear? I've heard stories about some of the Native American Indians who had that capability.
Oh, well, the native peoples are a little bit different than other humans because of their DNA and because of their long association and their great oath-taking to keep silent about many, many things. So in today's world, many native peoples, the majority of them, have lost the understanding of the old ways. But there are those who are being initiated, and many who will pass the initiations, and there are some who still have the magic. Absolutely. Just as you go to China and you work with some Qigong masters, and they say, here, watch this. Let me have that paper. They started on fire, just like that. So, of course, all these things are possible. What else, Steve?
I think that's it for now. I'll pass. I think somebody else had a question.
All right, who has a question?
Peace, this is Jim.
Joe, welcome.
Jim.
Who is it? Oh, Jim.
Jim, yeah.
Jim, welcome.
I'm curious about Shambhala under Tibet. We're talking about underground places. I recently had a life reading and was told that I lived in Tibet and didn't live in Shambhala, but people from Shambhala came up and visited me and then took me for a visit. And all my life I've been curious about it and followed Nicholas Roerich and whatnot. So it's interesting. I kind of related, it sort of rung a bell that this might be true when I had this life reading.
Well, listen, when someone gives you a reading and you get the doorbell rung, of course it is then part of a clue given to you to enhance your further understanding of, let's say, many lives. So you want to know about Shambhala.
Right. Kind of in relation to our discussion now, too, that There seems to be there's some good parts to the underground and some bad parts.
Absolutely, and the same can be said on the surface and in the heavens. There are forces on all three levels that want to work with you, that want to work against you, and some who are just not engaged. All right? Remember that. Now, Shambhala is considered to be a mythical city, and all kinds of people have gone looking for it. You mentioned Nicholas Rourke?
Right, the painter from Russia.
Yes. And what was his interest?
He was specifically looking for Shambhala, and there's a painting that he did called The Burning of Darkness that appears that they're coming out of a tunnel in the Himalayas with something, they're holding something, and it's turning everything kind of purple blue. The entire painting is purpley blue. And it looks like it's the people from Shambhala coming out with him. So he might have actually found these people, I'm not sure. He never really said.
It appears that he did find something, and the closest he was permitted to reveal it was in a painting. In other words, he was sworn never to say a word. And he presented something to make people question. He did not present things as they were in exactitude. That would be a betrayal of what he found. And he was, let's say, rewarded for his search after being tested many times. Now, you have heard of a story called Journey to the Center of the Earth?
Yes.
By Jules Verne?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there are all manner of stories everywhere about people taking boat rides up to the Arctic region, people going into caves and finding tunnel systems that move downward. Our vehicle was mentioning to you earlier about the in Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, which is an autonomous region of China, and the Chinese have been battling over Tibet for a long time. They refuse to let the Dalai Lama back in, and the Chinese want control over the inner regions. Shambhala, let's say, is one of these portal openings. It is not specifically deemed to a physical location. Yes, it has a coordinate point, but the geography around that coordinate point can be completely changed as to camouflage the opening. This is why it is said that only with the right energy, the right tools, the right consciousness, the right vibration does one find the opening. And of course, beings around these openings watch them all the time. They watch to see who's coming. Sometimes the beings inside the earth, the guards, so to speak, up there, are highly psychic. Sometimes they put highly ferocious beings to guard, such as one of the ferocious giants that was captured, we believe, in Afghanistan. Your personal connection is that you have been inside the earth. You have been in Tibet. You have been down into the inner workings. You have been a monk. Many times has those sort of mysteries sucked you in by interest, lifetime after lifetime. This lifetime is a little bit different for you, Jim. You are to be a regular person, so to speak, out and about in the world, having a regular job, and challenge is to integrate all of this. You too would benefit from some sort of travel to one of these places, or at least to see some film depiction of it, may start to fire off your DNA. You know, a campfire is a wonderful way to activate your inner insight. It's one thing to have a fire in the fireplace inside in winter, or to heat the house with a wood stove. But to gather outside at night, and to ground the space in, and to gather with friends over a fire to chat, to talk, to put things together, really activates opening of certain data inside. Watching television, the little devices, it stimulates so much that the mind becomes overwhelmed and it closes down your perceptions. And this is just a hint for Michael and Jim, a little bit of campfire gazing with some friends and good discussion can fire your awareness to brand new levels. Now, we heard the beep a beep, so did you have anything else you wanted to ask us, Jim?
That was my next question, was that how to remember past lives, and I think you answered that quite well.
Good. That will help you. But also, as we read your vibration, Michael and Jim, you are sort of both ready to go to some place new. You're ready to pop. You've got a lot of data and your mind says, come on, come on. Regressions, if you find a good regression therapist, the investment in a regression can last you for years and years and years and years. All right, understand this. This year, 2015, more and more people have to become more psychic. It's not as if you have a choice. It's in the air. You have to know more of your past lives. You are being compelled from the inside to go to a whole new level of operating, to accept it. And then it will answer many of the questions that have been roaming around in your life. This life, for many of you, is the lifetime out of thousands of them. This lifetime is it. So hang in there, have a good time, and we'll continue to tease you and to inform you and to be your pals in the cosmos. Take your recess and we'll continue with part 2 of this afternoon's discussion. All right, let's continue with this afternoon's discussion. We were talking with Jim about inner world and Shambhala. People brought up Shangri-La, more unexplained mysteries. And if you were in charge of Earth, as an overlord, so to speak, and you did not want the people of Earth to know of your position, then it would be right up your alley to create mysteries, purposely, to confound people, to keep them in the dark, in confusion, and in ignorance. So let's look at this angle for a while here, and have you put your thinking caps on. For many thousands of years now, there's been a steady investment in the people of Earth by the visiting extraterrestrials to pass themselves off as gods, so to speak, or God, and to create all manner of holes in the story. And what does God usually require of its people? Who knows?
Obedience.
Obedience, yes, that's first of all obedience, and obedience falls under the general title of worship. Yes, worship. And you know, there are those who have said, perhaps it was Mr. Sitchin or someone, that worship means to work for the gods. How do you like that? To work for the gods. Lots of people would find that to be a very powerful definition. Work for the God. Yes, I believe I want to work for God. That is what I'm here on earth to do, to work for the Lord, to work for God.
You know, sorry to interject, but Goldman Sachs believes that they do God's work.
Goldman Sachs
They do.
believe that they do God's work. And you know, Steve, lots of people believe that they do God's work, investing in the upliftment of humankind. Perhaps even Bill Gates believes he does God's work as well. And so it just is a matter of your definition. As we said, there are beliefs and there are perspectives, and then there are your perceptions. Today we are expanding your perceptions, investing in a greater awareness as to unexplained mysteries that, as you are going to come to the conclusion, nothing's really unexplained at all. It's sort of a big birthday party ongoing for children, as you are treated like children, to keep you confused, to purposely set up situations that in your few decades of life become confounded and confused. And you know, the Anunnaki are very aware that you live again and again. And it is in some way their rationale for tricking you, for getting you to believe false things. They feel, or even to get you to go and fight their wars. Remember, a long time ago, to work for the gods meant that you carried out their battles on earth. And even some gods would reward you. If you died in battle, then you would immediately be going to the higher realms of heaven, etc. So when one examines these stories without beliefs and perspectives getting all wound up together, when one puts beliefs aside and you are beliefless for a while, just observing, just putting the data together, and if you can detach enough, and if you can get your DNA to keep quiet, again, these Anunnakis like to work with your DNA to get you all fired up. If you can keep things pretty quiet, you realize that it makes no difference who the gods were. That there's holes in the story. On recess, you were talking about the Jesus story. People, we will tell you again and again and again and again that the story as you have heard it with Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and all the other players, it is not a reality. It was constructed much later on to suit the needs of the church. The mother church that allows no women. Fascinating, yes? Mm-hmm. Yes. So, and Sue, you were bringing up the idea that our vehicle said something about it's all an Anunnaki game as to which god they want to put in front of the people. And you said that you were reading The End Days by Mr. Sitchin, and
yes,
that he concluded,
he theorized that Marduk was the Jesus character.
Marduk played the role of the Jesus character. And we would say, if you remember correctly from our early works, we said that the Jesus situation was set up as a holographic insert. To wrap your head around that one. And so it is a bit of buffoonery and foolishness when humans relate to the Jesus story, a story that was never really there. It is like people saying, well, I was Prince Charming in the Cinderella story. You must understand, people, that the conscious mind really desires to put things together, even if it puts things together erroneously. And the Anunnaki want you to put things together erroneously. They want you to worship something. And they want to steer you away from understanding reincarnation. Because if you understand reincarnation, and if you start remembering and really putting things together, rather than being flattered by who you think you were in another lifetime, that is your biggest downfall, folks. If you feel flattered by some psychic who tells you that you were Mrs. George Washington or Mrs. Santa Claus or Mrs. Easter Bunny, you get the point, yes?
Yes.
That it is foolishness. And sometimes people do cross their timelines. But often the association of who was who and when is completely bogus. Completely. You have people on the world today who are claiming they are this person and this person and this person. Yet you have really powerful people who are no good nicks, who really steer away from letting anyone know who they are while they travel around the planet in their own footprints. So there's a danger to some of the old reincarnated players, many of which who have had strong Anunnaki influence, and these would be brutal tyrants, for example, who kept people in ignorance, who forced people to obey. This would be part of carrying on an Anunnaki story, to make certain that the people of Earth are kept busy, that they worship, and that they never put the Anunnaki story together. Yet, that they keep reasserting the presence of the Anunnaki everywhere. In the Western world, that presence of the Anunnaki is reasserted in homes around the world with the presence of the cross and a dead Jesus on that cross. A warning of sorts that if you dare to go to the cross, the planet of the crossing, it is dangerous and death could await you. It's one way of looking at it. The cross is part of a grid. You live in a grid of energy. You cannot perceive it, but you are in a fabric, a grid of energy. That grid has many, many layers to it. Some like to label those layers in terms of numbers. But, the numbers are irrelevant. Some people like to give those levels names. Yet you live in a name called third dimension. And your mind, your energy field, your awareness, your perceptions, it moves in and out of dimensions all the time. It moves between various levels of the grid or the energy. We were speaking earlier about magnetic anomalies and black holes. These would be points contrary to the grid. If you think about a grid, it is lined up, much as the Masonics learned to grid a city. North and south, east and west. This creates a grid. You look at the game board, the black and white checkered. We've said it's a map for navigating reality. It's a grid. If you look at the spiral or the black hole, it is the antithesis of a grid. And yet the spiral is an indicator of the shape of many things, whether you are looking at a seashell or the shape of the galaxy. So we just want you all to be more alert to the idea of your own sloppy thinking and your own sloppy beliefs. And see if you can spend an afternoon or an hour at least and say to yourself, all right, I'm going to be beliefless this afternoon, and see what ideas come in while I'm working in the garden, and allow myself to receive rather than to force things to fit into my beliefs. So now let's go back to creatures and the underworld and some of the challenges that you are facing as a people with some of the developments within the underworld. First of all, there's been an acceleration, as there are at times, in quakes. You had a few weeks ago a series of quakes that occurred along the border of India and Nepal, near the vicinity of Mount Everest. This is very big because, as we've said, Mount Everest is your highest mountain, and if you want to find visitors, particularly the Anunnaki, they really value the mountain. They taught this to the Chinese. Put the mountain to your back, all right? The mountain is to your back, it is in the north, and you are going to look forward to the south with the mountain behind you. Knowing this, knowing their preference for mountains, and knowing the historical evidence of preference for mountains by the gods to retreat to the mountains, even for the monasteries, you'll find them in some of the most outrageous perches of mountains that you can imagine. Go to a bookstore sometime and get a book on monasteries. Jim, this may help you. And you'll see that they're almost impossible to get to. Outrageous places. How could one even conceive to build there unless one was being constantly telepathed to and instructed by the Anunnaki? Maybe you will remember this, Jim, and it will expand your perceptions. Those in monasteries, those in any high position, they are in constant telepathic contact with others. This is why they meditate. This is why the admonishment for you and others to meditate. Meditation calms the mind on a very basic level. It teaches you how to be silent, how to quiet all that chatter. Changes the brainwave cycles. Once you become a decent meditator and you are able to quiet the mind, guess what happens? It is like you put a sign up that says open. If you are a shop owner, you have a little sign. When you want the shop open, you put open, you flip it over for closed. When you are not in the body and you are, for whatever reasons, not liking the body and doing your best to ignore it or to debase it, you put up a sign that says vacancy. That is perfect for a sign for the possessions and the entities to come on down and to hold open house in your physical body. And many people are paying this price dearly today. But when you are a meditator and you learn how to silence the mind, there's like a sign that says open for business. It means you are in charge and that you are there. But it also means that because you can quiet the yip-yap, you qualify to receive information from other sources. Now, in a religious point of view, they would say, it's God speaking, or the guides or higher realms. But forget all of that and look at all religions as simply being a club of the Anunnaki. All right? Clubs. This is Sunday. There's lots of club meetings today. The people who belong to their clubs belong in different levels. Some would be more valuable members than others, just like a team sport, for example. There are going to be star players on a team, and the rest are going to be sort of support. So in religions, especially those that would be in the East, Buddhism, etc., they are encouraged to be silent, to meditate, to go into seclusion. And some people lose their mind, some people gain a little bit of insight, some people have the ability to right away shoot out of the body. And they can look from above. And as we've mentioned before, one of the challenges that the, let's say, abbot, the person in charge of the monastery, may look for would be someone who could describe the shape of the monastery from above. This would be an indication of the success of the meditator. In the eastern regions of the world, oftentimes people meditate on a picture. What is it called, the picture? Who knows?
A yantra.
It's called what?
A yantra, like a mantra is a sound.
Yes.
A yantra is an image or depiction, a symbol that you meditate on.
And sometimes they are round and they have colors and things inside of them.
That's a mandala.
A mandala, yes, that's what we were looking for, mandala. And what they find is the mandala, by staring at it, then closing the eyes, the mandala can catapult a person eventually out of the body. And the mandala then can help them have a bird's eye view of perhaps how the monastery is laid out, such as the site on Java called Borobudur. So the point of taking people into religious orders, nuns, priests, monks, etc., would be to train them to find out who would be a good radio receiver. The ancient people of long ago used to use gemstones. They knew how to lay out crystals, jade in particular, diamonds, emeralds, what are some of the others? Sapphires, rubies.
Quartz.
What is it?
Quartz.
Quartz, yes, we are using quartz. You lay these out in certain patterns, and the DNA of the practitioner can literally light up and use the semi-precious stones as a radio device. You have biblical evidence of this in something called what?
Aaron's breastplate.
Aaron's breastplate. So you are on it today. Must be you've been studying, or you've been away from the electronics that they're nurturing your brain here. Aaron's breastplate. Now, Aaron was who?
Who was he the son of? Was he the son of Abraham?
No.
No, he wasn't. All right. Aaron, Jacob.
Aaron is more aligned in the Moses realm.
Oh, the Moses.
In that time period. In other words, Aaron had DNA, Anunnaki DNA, that, let's say, Enki DNA, that would facilitate his ability to wear the breastplate, have the stones on it, and to literally be a living radio communicator. Later on, as time proceeded forward, and now we are talking about 3,000 or more years later, 4,000 years later, humans, many of them, lost the ability. This is why things were made up during the last 2,000 years. Trickery of all kind was done. Children were gathered, especially in the East, put into monasteries. They were deprived. Some were sexually abused. Everything was done to see if they could activate the human to become a literal radio to speak with the Anunnaki. And of course, only once in a great, great while do they find someone who had this bloodline and this capability. And it was all, quote, an unexplained mystery. No one understood DNA. No one understood that at times the Anunnaki were out of range, so to speak, or that their systems were down, or that the signals coming from humankind were just not being boosted enough. Now, you recently had another earthquake just a few days ago in the region that we are speaking of, alluding to, Tibet, Nepal, Mongolia, this area that Jim brought up as far as being a sensitive area for his timeline, but also a very sensitive area for the planetary timeline. And it was not so long ago, we believe George Bush #2 visited Mongolia. Not the usual place on one's world travels. He went to Ulaanbaatar, and you'll see that soon others watch for who visits into Mongolia. We believe the Chinese leader Xi just went there or some such. Now, this is where it has been reported that there have long been activities coming and going from the center of the earth. The Ulaanbaatar is a modern city, of course, yet surrounded by yurts, yaks, very, very primitive people. And it is the primitives, the indigenous people from Australia to the deserts of the US to Mongolia, or even into the high Serengeti of Africa. Those who sleep under the stars, watch the skies, rest the head upon the earth. They are the ones who know more. And often what they see, they don't think anything of it. They are removed from modern culture. They are entrained in the old ways. And so the comings and goings of star beings or inner earth creatures is not so discombobulating or unusual to them. The rest of the world calls it unexplained mysteries. The rest of the world would be frightened and build walls and close off these areas or bomb them to stop the phenomena from occurring. And speaking of bombing, there's been plenty of that. Nuclear devices let off in specific places over the last number of years to destroy underground dwellers, to destroy their location, their portal openings, etc. Now, this latest quake in the area of Nepal, close to Everest, is also very close to extraterrestrial bases. We would say that Mount Everest would be, and the surrounding mountains, would be a key area for Anunnaki home because of its inaccessibility. And it is only a few people who get to go there. They pay large sums of money. We say few, it's hundreds, but still it's few compared to the planet. And the Anus always, and their branches on Earth, always want to remain inaccessible, whether it is the Antarctica or whether it is the Mount Everest area. So what you have going on here are incursions happening on Earth, going after areas that appear to have ultra-normal activity. We could call it paranormal, but we like ultra-normal better. This is all creating, as we've said, a lot of confusion on the psychic realms. Now, in addition to this kind of confusion, there's been a lot of speculation by various people, psychics, scientifics, renegades of all sorts, recalcitrant people, those rebelling against official words, that it's possible that some very, 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 very life-changing situations are going to happen sooner rather than later. The human psyche is alert to the future years before events occur. Many people speculate that the World Trade Centers were somewhat devoid of employees the day of 9/11 because perhaps the people felt something was going on. Well, yes, that's very legitimate. You do sense things far, far before they unfold. You have premonitions, you have feelings, and you have the ability to change your mind in any moment, to say, you know, I don't think I'll do this today, I think I'll do this, or I don't feel like going here, something's not quite supporting or right, so I think I'll do this. That's the whole point of premonition and knowing things from the future. And certainly events in your own life, the closer they are to your own direct experience, the easier they are to change. The larger events, global events, well, yes, if something's big going to happen to a city or a location that will have a global effect, you do have an inner radar that says don't go to work today or go in late or whatever. But also it is true that many people were warned to stay away on 9/11 and they are terrified. And it is a shame they have on their soul to the day they die and beyond, is that they knew something and they were told not to go in. And then when it all happened, no one wanted to say a word. It is the power of being able to control people. You have free will, you have free mind, but other forces can come in and change it. So be aware of that. And so there are a series of events that can go like dominoes this year, tumblings. It looks as if it's already confusing now, and that the events can start tumbling starting just after the autumn equinox. There are projections also where people are concerned that the climate change, global warming situation that is about terraforming, yes, and population reduction, but it is also about the presence, as we mentioned a class or two ago, of Nibiru. And that when this planet of the crossing crosses through your solar system, there tends to be systemic havoc. And that creatures and life forms and life cycles and seasonal changes and seasons and mental thinking and emotional, all of this starts to go topsy-turvy. Just observe and have, as we've said, a beliefless afternoon or two to consider these ideas and see what you are picking up on and what your job may be to shift the probes. You can change your own life, of course, but you are probably not going to chart the course of cosmic and global events. You are here to participate and to witness. All right, that said, let's pick up the ball and continue. Jim, now do you have anything more you want to ask us after we've given this bit of discussion?
Well, I have one other, this is kind of off this subject, but A friend of mine, Fiona, noted that the TPP was voted on by our Senate, and it was voted down. And then we had the Baltimore.
Say it again, the T.
TPP. It's a trade Pacific.
Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement.
Yeah. That was voted down, and that got a lot of press. And then the Baltimore train accident happened. That also was almost like a magic trick, where it changed the newspaper headlines. And then the TPP was voted positively in the Senate. So everyone kind of, their first thing was that it's been shot down, but now it's actually been approved by the Senate and it's going to the Congress.
So there is a speculation that there was a tit for tat?
Right, something. Yeah.
Warning shot across the bow.
Warning shot. Now listen, there's a lot of pressure, as you've known, by the president to open up the Pacific, yes, and to get trade agreements there. And they say, oh, it's not going to be like NAFTA at all. It's not going to be like Mexico and Canada and South America. You're not going to lose jobs and open borders, etc. People, the Anunnaki do not like your nationalistic stances. Because when you are nationalistic and you are all for rah-rah, your country and your president, that means that you might be a threat to some sort of mutiny. These are the owners and builders of Earth. They do not want any kind of mutinies at all. And if you've noticed Mr. Obama lately, he's looking a bit grayer and thinner. Quite a bit. He's being forced. His hand is being forced. He's not happy at all. He's being blackmailed behind the scenes, and he wishes it was just simple blackmail. When you have children, you are very vulnerable when you are a political leader. So his hands are tied, so to speak, and he's forced to push through agendas and gulp it down, and he's in a situation that he does not want to be in and cannot back out. And he is like all the other presidents. Once they realize what they are up against, they wander the halls of Washington, the White House at night, muttering to themselves, looking at the gallery of past presidents, wondering, how the blast did I end up in this situation? And what did they know? And were they also stuck with what I'm stuck with? You see, it's one thing to be lauded as president and important, and another to realize, just as the emperors of China realized, they lived at the highest levels, isolated, of course, surrounded by eunuchs, of course. No other male could be allowed in the presence of the emperor. So it was eunuchs all, and the empress and concubines. Anyone remember that? Yes. And when you became a eunuch, if you passed the test, you lived. And they saved your genitals. Gentlemen?
Big consolation.
They saved them so that there would be no violation upon death. That after you served the emperor, without any competition or your own testosterone to overthrow anything, upon your death as diviners and such, you were then reunited with your genitals. So there were people that were keepers of the male genitalia. Think about it. Perhaps that will stir some memories. So, where were we there with Jim?
Well, I'm just wondering if it was a bit of a magic trick with the Baltimore.
Oh yes, sorry.
Being tied in with the TPP, because now everyone thinks it's been shot down, but in actuality.
Well, let's tie this together. So, China and the Pacific areas have certain desire to become superpower, and they are sitting on artifacts, and they have direct, let's say, lineage or direct communication, and the U.S. as the world's premier superpower is being pressured to conform to Anunnaki wishes and to carry out certain situations that would benefit a one world order, which would be the Anunnaki wanting one world. And when people who are not in the know say, well, this isn't going to do us any good, let's vote against AFTRA, NAFTA, the Pacific Agreement. Situations are arranged, and then minds can be changed. And whenever you see governmental forces against something and then doing a quick turnaround, you know the old blackmail or some sort of fear in one is struck. Mr. Obama is not as effective at convincing others. He becomes too angry very quickly because of the pressure he's under. Some presidents were very good about convincing others, inspiring them, tricking them. Obama does not have that gift of working with others or winning their trust or convincing them. Therefore, he defaults again and again because he is commanded to. He defaults to executive order. Do it because we said it. This is what you are dealing with. Who else has question, comment?
Well, this is George. It's not quite on the topic there, but I had this thought when you were talking earlier about the planet of the crossing, Nibiru, getting closer, and that the closer it gets, would we have more and more anomalies, more and more black hole portals, more and more things happening because of just the energy that it's bringing through, but it's getting closer. I mean, that may be a stretch. But
it's not a stretch. It's a good point, George, because many have speculated that Nibiru would have a tail millions of miles in length because of its force and the detritus that would be involved in traveling with it. Mm-hmm. And the projection is that the tail, if Nibiru enters your system sooner rather than later and makes some sort of orbital incursion into your system, its tail would then affect the orbital plane of all the planets, right, particularly the planets that would have a closer orbit around the Sun: Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Mars being, 2 years around the Sun?
Right, 2 years, a biennial, right.
Yes, so that this tail can hang around for a long time. And there is legitimate speculation that a lot of the underground facilities that have been built are there for surface people to retreat to. The problem now has arisen, and the betrayals are very great, that some of these underground facilities that were built in earnestness, secrecy of course, but in earnest, by military contractors and their hirelings, and sometimes the hirelings are treated just as the emperors and kings of old treated their hirelings, especially the pharaohs. The workers were set to dig a tomb on the, let's say, east bank of the Nile, the burial grounds, the West Bank. And the workers were set to construct a tomb in the West Bank, or the burial area of the Egyptian pharaohs, towards the setting sun. Everyone involved in the building of the tombs was silenced. You know this, yes? Because if they were not killed, then they would be able to tell where the important pharaoh, representative of the visitor Anunnaki, were buried. Take this and put this all around the planet. So even today, some of these underground cities that are constructed in earnestness by black military projects, the workers are silenced in different ways. They are fried in the brains so that they cannot remember. They are given amnesia, or sometimes they are simply disposed of or passed on to others for different usages. But the betrayal, deep betrayal, is this: building complex modern structures deep below the ground is an Anunnaki trick. The Anunnakis have often used the rulers of the world and to carry out their own god wars. So we've suggested to you that these Anunnaki fight one another. Family dynasties versus ancient artifacts. Who has them? Where are they buried? Are they under the ice? Are they in the Himalayas? Are they in the Southwest? Are they in Shambhala? Where are these artifacts? What are these artifacts? What can they do? One of them being a very familiar one that all people would know of, and it is called the Ark of the Covenant. It would be sort of an example of a powerful Anunnaki artifact. And that Ark of the Covenant, it was Moses and his children who carried that thing around. It gave off radiation. It was a type of radio that one could speak to their God. Now, the Anunnaki have used kings and popes and presidents to imbue them with power, and then to have those leaders build up their military forces. And then the Anunnaki would create these battles on Earth between their players, sometimes solely for entertainment. Just as people today have computers and they buy games called World War something, and they play these violent video games, and the people in the games are what you call avatars or cartoons, and the runner will rape this one and chop this one in half, and the game player can do anything they want within the construct of the computer game. These computer games, of which are ruining your planet and ruining the minds of adult people, because no adult people need to be playing games. Not as much as they are on the planet. It means they have not left childhood. This is what the Anunnaki do. They get one country, such as the USA, and they impulse or inspire people to join the army and to have them be all ideal. And then they get a leader or a general or someone in power to get some ideas to go and carry out unnecessary wars. And these wars and these battles are carried out as theater, as mystery plays, as drama for the Anunnaki. Yes, the wars often allow world leaders to get into location so that artifacts can be retrieved. This is what's been going on in the Middle East for the last 25 years. But you must understand that, as we said earlier, you are observed, you are toyed with, and depending upon your beliefs and your values, that's the kind of energies that you will attract that will play with you. And then you will spend thousands and thousands and thousands of lifetimes incorporating your activities and accepting responsibility for your clarity or lack thereof. Something to think about. All right. Where were we, George?
One other question that came up when you were talking. The whole shale drilling, what do you call it, fracking?
Fracking.
Could that be used as a cover-up for looking for things deep underground? In other words, is that...
Some of it is, yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Here's the thing with fracking. In order for fracking to be cost-effective, at least some of these statistics that are out say that oil must be between $80 and $85 a barrel. So you have this big fracking boom from Texas, North Carolina wants in on it, the Dakotas, but oil is now scraping at $60 a barrel, and a few months ago it was 40-something. So there's no common sense to link this up. So of course there's something else going on. Getting people in location, setting things up, for example, so setting up oil rigs and things of this nature and digging situations, and then saying, oh, it's not effective, so we're going to shut this down. Sorry, you are out of a job. Well, so they got what they wanted set up, and then they send everyone home they don't need. Do you follow this? Then the military, some people disguised as the military, or people disguised from themselves who don't even know who they really are, go in and carry out jobs. The big thing that is going on is dealing with what is going on beneath the surface of the earth and what is coming out of this surface in greater number. So when you said, George, the presence of Nibiru, can it really create more phenomena? Absolutely. It is traditionally known as a destabilizer, that it's passing through this system and its own periodicity can create great disturbances. Now back to these underground cities. So not only did the military build bolt holes that people could exit to. Have you ever been to an underground where there's shopping and malls and perhaps train stations and all of this? They're all over the earth. If you humans can build this, then what can the Anunnakis build? So the point we are getting is this: these cities way underground, mile or two below the mantle, they've been built and then they've been taken over. So that is the big betrayal, is that the surface people thought that these cities that they were building in earnest, even China is building them, they thought that they were going to be for the military and selected families to go into in case of surface disturbances, mutinies, electromagnetic pulses, and any other crazy cosmic connections. But now they are finding that these underground areas have other beings dwelling there. Build it and they will come. It's just not who they thought.
Was going to come.
So we are saying to you that, again, more inside scoopings here, nothing so secret that can't be brought out, and of course, how would we know except by reading the what's in the ethers? Again, so much stress on the surface leaders. They are not certain what's what. And then recently you have the new Pope here. We still call him the new Pope, the last Pope as he's been referred to. The last Pope because of certain other situations that will occur. But he recently set things into turmoil. He supported, he came out against Turkey, and they are all up in arms in Turkey about him, about the, Armenians, the genocide of the Armenians, and now he's recognizing Palestine. This is not making people happy at all. This Pope is following instructions. He goes up into that orb at the top of the basilica, and he is able to receive communications. Lots to think about, yes?
Yes.
This is going to be quite a year of, as we've been discussing with you, George, and others, Saturn, Neptune aspects, creating the big question, what is really real? What is real? And as people start to recognize what they thought is real is not, they may lose heart, they may become sick, they may start to say, well, who cares? I'm just going to do this. It's all going up in steam. And you may get a lot of people losing their mental stability because of so much chaos. We'll go back to questions in a moment, but we want to give you a few heads up on maintaining yourself in terms of health and all of this. There are quite a number of components that make up your well-being. And nutrition, of course, many people are pointing to change your food habits, change what you eat, and you certainly can change the chemical outcome in the body. You are a chemical soup on one level, and so if you change the chemistry of your food, you are certainly going to change the chemistry of your biology. Also, your emotions, how you feel about things, is of utmost importance. Too many people are used to being polite, or they suffer from nice-itis, which is a very, very severe disease, nice-itis, always having to say things to make sure that no one looks at you cross-eyed. Make sure that you please everyone except yourself. And so that nice-itis goes with stuff it, stuff it, stuff it, stuff it, stuff it. And people are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. China does not have the big people that you have. It's working on it, but they do not have the big people that you have in the USA. They're catching up, though. Then you have your mental attitude, your mental confusion about what cancer is, what heart disease is, what diabetes is, and you're being bombarded. You cannot open a magazine where every few pages there are few more pages of drugs and all of the side effects. Number one is always death. Take this drug, it will help you, but please know this first side effect is nausea, fainting, mental disturbances, and death and suicide. So there you have it. So you have nutrition, very important. You have emotional connection to how you really feel, and do you have the freedom to express how you feel? Do you give yourself permission to tell the truth, or do you suffer from nice-itis or fear? Mental confusion, because you don't want to change your beliefs and it's too much going on. Then you have stress. Stress is probably the biggest cause of throwing people off balance. Whatever stresses you, whatever gets you all crazed, it sets your mental going, it sets your emotional going, and then it sets your nutrition going, because when people are in stress, they do whatever they want to alleviate the stress. So nutrition, mental, emotional, then stress. And then to help yourself deal with all of this, you must detox. These are traditional approaches to health. But on top of all this, you have timeline connections. Who have you been in the past, and what so-called karma are you working off in this lifetime to help balance the score, so to speak? What have you taken on in other lifetimes that is currently affecting the fulfillment of your life in the present? And if you have been a eunuch, for example, caught up in that game, losing your genitals from long ago, or even losing them today, many females are being mutilated all over the Muslim world. Why? Because it is forbidden for women to have pleasure. So then you have rules that are making no sense. So as we said, the main components, nutrition, mental, emotional, stress, and detoxification, that will do something for you. But what's your soul story? What is it that is nagging at you, that plays a major role in your life, and yet you have not figured out that it's a carryover, a pain, unresolved understanding from another lifetime, particularly in the first three chakras, most particularly in the first three chakras. And then for some people, the fifth, the throat. Loss of punishment along the lines of time shuts the throat chakra down. When the throat chakra is closed down, the person is ripe and ready for sexual abuse. It goes sort of hand in hand. And then the other component to factor in when you are talking about your well-being and your health and your vitality is when you become ill, and when something is not working in your body in optimum capacity. What is the positive purpose that this illness serves? These are the real questions. What gets carried over from other lifetimes that all the nutrition in the world is not going to fix? And when things are not working, how is it that you are creating what you want to get what you want, even if you have to use subversive, passive-aggressive situation? Sometimes the positive purpose is to clean the slate of situations that no longer serve you. Sometimes the positive purpose is to exit. It's time to die because you do not have the wherewithal to deal with the situation. Sometimes the positive purpose is to put you in a position so that you can receive love and caring, when generally you don't know how to ask for it or don't know how to receive it. When you are very vulnerable and you can't walk, or you can't wipe your bottom, or you can't feed yourself, then the positive purpose is to allow you, to allow others to help you out when it is needed. Independence is admirable, but sometimes independence, too much of it, becomes stubborn isolationism. So that is a bit of consideration for our listeners and our attendees on the points of physical well-being. Now let's get back to discussion. Who has something they want to bring up here?
This is Jean.
Jean, welcome.
Yes, this is going back to the discussion about, all the leaders being so actually very directly in contact with the Anunnaki overlords, directing them and so forth.
Yes, and can you see by the faces, the looks on their faces, that no one looks too carefree?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good. We just wanted to make certain that. All right, Jean, what's your question?
Well, one thing a lot of people noticed with during the first debate between Obama and Mitt Romney,
Yes.
the elections, that that was after the huge scandal exploded for Romney. We figured, oh, there's no way in the world, the secret video that was taped by.
Oh yes, when he talked about the
47%.
47%.
People thought, okay, this is over. I mean, why are we even bothering? Can't we just stop now? Let's stop wasting time and money. And everyone thought Obama was like, oh, it's just handed him on a platter. Of course he's going to win this debate. And then he bombed horribly and ended up losing it. And
Yes, and do you remember the night he bombed horribly, how sick he looked?
Yes, that's the point I'm bringing up. Is
They
like
were
he and Michelle
blackmailing.
both, they looked. People could figure out that they came out and they just had these terrible looks in their faces.
And that's because of what they were doing to their children.
Oh. It was like almost I felt, does he get instructions, go easy on him? We don't want
He
this
attempted to
we don't
throw
want
it.
this. Oh, okay.
He attempted to get out of it. And why did they not want Romney? Because Romney is basically his own man.
Mm.
He follows some instructions, but he is a die-hard true believer of Mormonism. Mormonism simply being another branch of the Anunnaki teachings, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to go into any religion that is not dominated by the Anunnaki.
Mm.
It is impossible. Be let's just say that Tit for Tat's being replayed now because another fellow was said to be at fault for Mitt Romney's loss. Not only Mitt Romney and his 47% stumbling there, and believe us when we say that Obama and others have said much, much worse. That was just insider fighting. It was a little fellow named George Stephanopoulos or something of this nature. He asked the dangerous question about abortion of Mitt Romney, and it was said that because of little Stephanopoulos' their audacity, that made Romney look like a fool, and Romney, they blame him for losing it. Now, who just got taken down quite mightily? Little Stephanopoulos.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So the bottom line is it doesn't make any difference who the players are. There's nastiness on the inside. Nasty, nasty, nastiness. And no one is who they say they are. And they come out with their apologies and their smiles, and we'll say all of these people are two-faced. They are all nasty players. And have you seen a movie called Hunger Games?
No, I haven't seen it. I'm aware of it.
We do not recommend movies. That is not our forte. But we would suggest that if you can stomach it, that you watch a version or two of this particular portrayal, which is campy, to say the least, but it is campy in such a way that it's over the top in showing you how phony everything is in the movie. And watching the movies, the various series of it, take away how phony everything is in the world that you see. You tend to give people too many passes there, Jean. Whether it is Bill Cosby or Michelle Obama, if we remember correctly. And you give people loyalty that do not deserve loyalty because you yourself are a good person. You project onto others what you want them to be rather than what they are. And do not let their race, their religion, their ethnicity stand in your way. Recognize a sleaze when you see it. Because if you don't, this is personal for you now, this is your test in this lifetime, to be able to unequivocally say this is a good person and this is not, and have no prejudice within it. You with us?
Yes.
Good. If you pass this test and you don't get color-blinded by any of the things that have influencing people's color blindness, then you will come through it. And we will say this on a big level, whether it is religions or races, and gender issues. Religions, races, and gender issues. These are being thrown in front of you people to trip you up and to trap you into political correctness or loyalties without recognizing how much mind control and mind mucking is going on. All of you need to say a prayer at the end of your days, every night before you go to bed, and make an intention that the forces that work with you bring you ever greater clarity of mind and peace in your heart. That's quite simple, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Ever greater clarity of mind and peace in my heart. That is a powerful conditioning, because clarity of mind is what is absolutely needed, required by all people. And peace in the heart means that whatever you see, you are still going to be able to be peaceful. This is an accomplishment extraordinaire. What else, Jean?
Well, I guess along those lines of, say, what our world leaders are actually dealing with once they get into office, I wondered, like during the 60s with the Kennedys and also Martin Luther King, were their deaths the result of maybe not following orders they were given, especially with the Kennedys?
Oh, absolutely. All three. The two Kennedys and Martin Luther King. The mistake they made with Martin Luther is he wasn't going to follow orders. He was a spokesperson for the black people. He was a very powerful force and he could rally them. But he was a threat because, again, the Anunnaki in their realm, the thing that they feel most threatened by is mutiny. And so their representatives on earth, popes, presidents, princes, etc., kings, they are also afraid of mutiny, or another term called civil war. Remote viewers in the 60s were deathly afraid of reporting what they saw, which was a re-stimulation of the Civil War from the 1860s. And you recall how much civil unrest was growing. Kennedy, the president, was killed in '63. It was insider job, of course, and Lyndon Johnson was the one who benefited the most. He's the one who winked and closed his eyes to certain situations. Others, even the Bushes, were involved in carrying out this assignment. Kennedy was too much of a rogue, and he would not follow orders, and he was getting very interested, too interested from some points of view, in the hidden UFO stories that were coming out. If you remember, he said, this is John Kennedy now, we are going to put someone on the moon. You were already on the moon. The Nazis had already been to the moon. There's already been taking people up and showing them what was up there. So he could not be controlled. Bobby Kennedy, his brother, they were very caught up in being good pals. They shared women. They shared Jackie. They shared Marilyn Monroe. They shared many of their women together. And this was the way they were blackmailed, the way they were infiltrated. Marilyn Monroe also falls in that window. She was taken out just before Kennedy was killed because she was going to blab too many things. The Kennedy boys couldn't keep their zippers up, so to speak, as the expression goes, which will always get you in big trouble when you are in politics. Robert, of course, he knew a lot. He wanted to go after crime. That was a cover for other things. The crime lords, etc. All that was drug running and gambling and all that. That was simply a cover for much bigger fish. And Martin Luther, he was taken out because, again, remote viewers saw that had he stayed alive, the potential to have a second civil war come down in this country was very great. He was taken out. He was not taken out by the man who was blamed for his killing. Secret forces do all of these things, and the people who are held that are responsible are never the ones involved, just as Sirhan Sirhan with Robert Kennedy. Yes, he was mind control slave, he sent there, but others did the killings. Same with Martin Luther King and JFK. So, you get too close to the truth, you prove to be too much of a revolutionary or recalcitrant, and you are taken out. The downside was that King, who was no shiny emerald himself, he cheated on his wife relentlessly. If the Kennedys couldn't keep their zippers up, Martin's was down all the time. He was a classless man, so to speak. There are many, let's say, stories of his lack of ethics, but he was true to his people in his dream and wanting equality. This was where the threat came in. Why? Because long ago, in ancient Africa, when the Anunnaki were building their clones and building their breeding pairs, they color-coded them. You call it races or ethnicity. And the black race was utilized, constructed as a race of workers. Not that the other humans were not, but the black race in particular that was isolated in Africa, in Enki's land, was there to carry out very heavy old labor under the ground in the mines. To this day, that memory of not being treated equal to the other clone types of other colors and races has stayed within the black race. And it is a stigma and a conditioning that must be overcome without victimhood. And Martin Luther King was considered to be a potential threat to start or to be, let's say, the inspiration behind race wars that he did not want himself. Does this help expand your perceptions a bit, Jean?
Yes, yeah.
Good. Remember, sometimes heroes are constructed. They are not heroes at all. Sometimes they are dark characters, and the white race has many of them, that are put up there as noble people, when in actuality they are quite flawed and they are big betrayers. Nothing is exactly as it appears to be. That was the beeper, yes?
Yes.
So we are at the end of this afternoon's discussion. In summation, we suggested that it is time for everyone to go to a new level. We also suggested that we would deliver to you a higher dose of energy this afternoon. An energy that can elevate you, that can bring good things, and that will give you opportunity, a gift from the Pleiades for the next 5 days. Use it wisely, dear friends. And also, invest in your perceptions. Allow your perceptions to grow and to tune in as if you are a device that can directly interact with the cosmos, the information that wants to be explained, that wants to be explored. This is part of your role, dear friends. You are compelled to understand. Accept it and enjoy it. It has been our great pleasure. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, and happy anniversary.